The city held secrets, dark, terrible secrets. Secrets that whispered through the cracks of the old buildings and echoed in the empty streets. The kind of secrets that made the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, that made you quicken your pace as you walked home at night. One such secret was hidden in plain sight. It was a place that seemed to exist outside of time, a place where the past and present collided in a haunting dance of shadows and light. An alleyway, narrow, cobbled, and always damp. The cobblestones were slick with moisture, and the walls seemed to close in on you as you walked, as if the alley itself was alive and watching. The air hung heavy, thick with the stench of decay and fear. This was Whispering Alley, a place where the fog rolled in like a living entity, wrapping itself around you, making it hard to see, hard to breathe. The alley was a scar on the face of the city, a reminder of the darkness that lurked just beneath the surface, waiting to swallow the unwary. A place where the sun never quite reached, where the shadows lingered long after night had fallen. The buildings on either side loomed tall and oppressive, blocking out any light that might have dared to penetrate the gloom. Locals knew to avoid it. They spoke of it in hushed tones, warning each other to stay away, to never venture down its dark path. Those who didn't often met with unfortunate ends. Stories of disappearances, of strange occurrences, of people who went in and never came out were common. The alley was never truly silent. There were always noises, whispers on the wind, the kind of whispers that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once, filling the air with a sense of unease. The scuttling of rats in the darkness, their tiny feet pattering on the cobblestones, their eyes glinting in the dim light, always watching, always waiting. And sometimes, if you listened closely, you could hear something else, something deeper, more sinister, a sound that sent chills down your spine, a low, guttural growl that seemed to emanate from the very walls themselves, a sound that made you question whether the alley was just a place or something more, something alive, something hungry. A young woman stumbled into the alley, lost and disoriented. She had been separated from her friends, and now she was all alone. The darkness pressed in on her, suffocating. "Hello," she called out. Her voice echoed back to her, distorted and strange. A whisper reached her ears. "This way," it hissed. "I can help you." She hesitated, her better instincts screaming at her to run. But the whisper was insistent, drawing her deeper into the alley. She took a step forward, then another. The whispers grew louder, urging her on. She could feel her heart pounding in her chest. She was in terrible danger, she knew it, but she couldn't stop herself. Old Man Hemlock lived in the building overlooking the alley. He had lived there for as long as anyone could remember. He had seen things, heard things, things that would chill the blood. One night he saw something move in the shadows across the alley, a shape, tall and thin with long sharp claws. It moved with an unnatural grace, gliding through the darkness. Hemlock watched in horror as the creature stalked a young couple entering the alley. He tried to scream, to warn them, but no sound escaped his lips. The creature pounced, its claws flashing in the dim light. The couple's screams were cut short. Hemlock could only watch in terror as the creature dragged its victims into the darkness. I had heard the stories, the whispers, the disappearances. They were more than just urban legends, they were warnings. Warnings that something sinister lurked in the shadows, waiting for the next unsuspecting soul to wander into its grasp. I was a paranormal investigator, and I was drawn to places like this, places where the unexplained was a daily occurrence, where the line between reality and the supernatural blurred. My equipment was ready and my senses were heightened, places where the veil between our world and the next was thin, so thin that sometimes you could almost reach out and touch the other side. The fog that hung in the air seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. I stood at the mouth of the alley, my camera in hand. The entrance loomed before me like a gaping maw, ready to swallow me whole. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what lay ahead. The air was thick with a palpable sense of dread. It clung to my skin, making every hair on my body stand on end. The atmosphere was oppressive, almost suffocating, as if the alley itself was alive and aware of my presence. I could feel my heart racing. Each beat echoed in my ears, a constant reminder of my own vulnerability. My breath came in shallow gasps, and I had to force myself to stay calm. I took a step into the alley, and the hair on the back of my neck stood on end. Every instinct screamed at me to turn back, but I pressed on. The darkness seemed to close in around me, wrapping me in its cold embrace. I could feel eyes on me, watching my every move. I was not alone. The sensation was unnerving, as if unseen entities were scrutinizing my every action, waiting for me to make a mistake. I continued down the alley, my flashlight cutting through the darkness. The beam was weak, barely piercing the thick fog, but it was enough to keep me moving forward. Each step was a battle against the fear that threatened to overwhelm me. The air grew colder and the stench of decay intensified. It was a smell that clung to the back of my throat, making me gag. The further I went, the more the alley seemed to close in on me, its walls pressing tighter and tighter. I could hear the whispers now, swirling around me like a living thing. They were faint at first, barely audible, but they grew louder with each step. Words I couldn't understand, voices that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The alley was alive with their presence, and I knew I had to find out what they were trying to tell me. Section 5. A history steeped in blood. My research had led me to the city archives. I'd uncovered old newspaper articles, police reports, even personal diaries. They all told the same story. Whispering Alley had always been a place of darkness. Centuries ago, the alley had been the site of a gruesome murder. A wealthy merchant had been brutally slain, his body left to rot in the filth. The killer was never caught. Over the years, there had been other deaths, accidents, suicides, even the occasional unexplained disappearance. The alley had a way of claiming people. The stories spoke of a curse, a malevolent entity that haunted the alley, feeding on the fear and suffering of its victims. Section 6, The Ritual. One diary in particular caught my attention. It belonged to a woman who had lived in the building overlooking the alley in the 19th century. She wrote of strange rituals taking place in the alley at night. She described hooded figures chanting in an unknown language. She wrote of blood sacrifices and unholy invocations. She believed they were summoning something evil. I returned to the alley, armed with this new knowledge. I knew I had to find out what those people had summoned all those years ago. I had to know what lurked in the shadows. Section 7. The Vanishing. This is the story of a night that changed everything. A night when the boundaries between the known and the unknown blurred into a chilling reality. I set up my equipment in the center of the alley. The darkness seemed to swallow the light from my flashlight, creating an oppressive atmosphere that made every shadow seem alive. Cameras, EVP recorders, EMF meters. Each device was meticulously placed, ready to capture any sign of the supernatural. The air was thick with anticipation, every sound amplified in the stillness. I was determined to capture evidence of the supernatural. My heart raced with a mix of fear and excitement, knowing that tonight could be the night I finally proved the existence of the unseen. The air crackled with energy. It was as if the very fabric of reality was being stretched thin, ready to tear open and reveal the mysteries beyond. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. They seemed to come from all directions, echoing off the walls and filling the alley with an eerie chorus of voices. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. Something was coming. Suddenly, the temperature plummeted. The cold was unnatural, biting through my clothes and chilling me to the bone. The air grew heavy, difficult to breathe. It felt as though an invisible weight was pressing down on me, making every breath a struggle. A cold wind whipped through the alley, sending shivers down my spine. It carried with it a sense of foreboding, as if warning me of the danger that lurked just out of sight. And then, just as suddenly, everything went silent. The whispers ceased. The wind died down. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, leaving behind an eerie calm. The only sound was the pounding of my own heart. I checked my equipment. Nothing. No readings, no anomalies. It was as if the alley had swallowed all evidence of the supernatural. It was as if whatever had been there was gone. The alley was empty, devoid of any sign of the strange occurrences that had just taken place. But I knew the truth. It wasn't gone. It was just hiding, watching, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself once more, waiting for its next victim. The alley held its secrets close, and I knew that this was just the beginning of a much larger mystery. Section 8. Unanswered Questions. I left the alley that night, my mind racing. I'd found no answers, only more questions. What was the entity that haunted Whispering Alley? What did it want? And why had it been summoned in the first place? I had no answers, only the chilling certainty that the horrors of Whispering Alley were far from over. Section 9. The whispering remains. Whispering Alley remained, a scar on the city, a reminder of the darkness that lurked beneath the surface. The whispers continued, faint but ever present, a warning to those who dared to enter. The alley was a place of fear, a place of mystery, a place where the veil between our world and the next was thin, and it always would be. The whispers remained, a haunting reminder of the secrets that whispered within the shadows, the secrets of Whispering Alley.